Breaking the green ceiling. Women, and particularly women of color, are underrepresented in climate-related fields. Storm Team 5's David Williams introduces us to two women at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, whose work tells us a little bit more about what's happening under the sea.
I want to study something that is chemistry-oriented, but in the environment.
Much of what we as humans understand about climate change comes from large impacts, major storms, and flooding. Little is known outside the scientific community about what is happening at the microscopic level. Meet Dr. Laura Mota, an assistant scientist in the Marine Chemistry and Geochemistry Department at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute.
We understand climate change is a big problem. But if we really want to tackle it, we have to understand what we call biochemical cycles work.
Dr. Mota is researching the relationship between light and complex marine organisms. Phytoplankton organisms are a vital part of the food web and help sustain food security for fish.
We got all these isotopic signals that didn't make sense when it was photochemical. And if it doesn't make sense, that means we don't understand the chemistry.
Chemistry is how we find out how climate change may impact these organisms. Dr. Mota's pursuit of answers has taken her as far as Antarctica to study penguins and their food sources. Dr. Mota's interest in one particular element is personal. She was born and raised in Colombia, a country with one of the highest emissions of mercury due to its use in gold mining.
And we all know mercury is a global pollutant.
Some of the mercury that appears in food sources such as fish is naturally occurring and not a result of human-caused interventions.
Since it's on everything, we cannot track it. That was the big issue. So when you have coal power plants that emit mercury gas, it could go anywhere. And what gets deposited in the ocean is not what ends up in the fish. Chemistry happens in between.
According to the National Science Foundation, Latinos earned 9.6% of all STEM PhDs, and the disparity is even greater for Latinas in academia. Dr. Mota hopes her success is an example to others.
If you don't see a lot of people that look like me in the field, how would you know you can do it?
We continue to learn more and more about our oceans, and the best ways to learn is to take a dive.
We joined Gwyneth Packard and her team giving the Phoenix a test run.
An autonomous underwater vehicle, or AUV as we call them, is a vehicle that does its whole mission by itself. When it's in the water, we are not joysticking, we are not telling it what to do. So we've started our next generation project, which is the Phoenix vehicle. And the Phoenix vehicle represents new hardware and new software.
The Phoenix gathers important data from the bottom of the ocean. Using cameras and strobes, scientists can request and program in a wide range of data samples for it to gather.
We've even incorporated a pump sampler so they could actually bring back filter papers with larvae that they wanted to look at. Typically, we're looking at chemical signals, water properties.
AUVs have the ability to find pivotal information that will further our understanding of climate change.
I went to an iceberg workshop last week, which was the beginning of a collaboration between people from all disciplines of science and engineers talking about how we could study icebergs to look at the relationship between the icebergs and climate.
Like Dr. Mota, Packard often finds herself being one of, if not the only, person of color in many spaces. With a diverse background in physics, robotics, and computer science, Gwyneth is an inspiration to the next generation of STEM professionals.
I was really thrilled to be asked by Dr. Winrow to join the Board of Advisors for Black Girls Dive Foundation, which was founded to give opportunities to young Black women to enter marine science through engagement activities like scuba diving. And so these experiential learning situations where they can build their STEM identity.
Gwyneth helped bring members of Black Girls Dive onto the Woods Hole campus as summer interns, and recently traveled with a group to Egypt on a capstone trip. Her work with AUVs is practice of constant adaptation and recalibration and new discoveries and circumstances, and her career advice mirrors that.
Stay curious and be willing to pivot.
And joining me now right here is Dr. Lettice Lafleur. She's Chief of Conservation and Stewardship at the New England Aquarium. Hi.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So, as we've noted, a few women of color work in this field. Just a few. What was your inspiration?
To be honest, I'm a Chicagoan. I don't have a typical story. I didn't grow up on the coast, but the Great Lake of Michigan. And I had the Shedd Aquarium in my, quote, backyard. And so I was inspired to see ocean conservation and the possibilities of these careers, and I just started to pursue that. At the time, there was no Google. My educator mother sent me to the library, and I learned there was a career in marine science, and because of that exposure at an aquarium, I started to pursue it, and I came east actually to Rhode Island to pursue that.
I grew up on a Great Lake as well in Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland, okay.
Now, did you encounter more encouragement or more resistance as you pursued this career path?
I had a bit of both. So I was fortunate. My mother was an educator, so I got the encouragement from her, but I did get resistance along the way. Questions, is this the field for you? Can you even swim? As you might know, many people of color might live near a body of water but don't know how to swim. Mm-hmm. So there was resistance along the way, and by the time people understood that I was determined to go this path. I meet many people that say I used to want to be a marine biologist, but I'm one of the few that have done it. Uh-huh. And the community of Black women doing it has grown quite a bit. I used to see so many of the same women in conferences and classrooms, and I used to be the only one in the classroom. So along the way, the encouragement has grown, the network has grown. You have Black and Marine Science, you have Black Girls Dive. I just saw that in your previous clip. They're coming on February 13th to give a Lowell lecture to the public about these opportunities. So it's changed a lot over the years.
So tell me more about how the aquarium engages people of color when it comes to attracting them to the waterfront, and what the aquarium is doing to help people who may see some of the economic barriers when it comes to accessing activities on the coast.
Though we have a range of ways of doing that, one of our key pillars is inspiring and developing advocates and building resilient community partnerships. So we work with the organization called CREW, Coalition for Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront. We were one of the founding members of this organization, and we actually now have a waterfront exhibit open to the public right along our Harbor Walk, celebrating these community partnerships. And so we use the Harbor Walk, we use these free external exhibits, and we have educational programs to help bring students and family members from select communities. We're also one of the first cultural partnerships for the BPS Sundays program with the City of Boston. It's just now been announced that it's expanded to all youth. So through education programs, community partnerships, and our place right on the waterfront, we encourage community members to come be with us and partner with us.
Now, just very quickly, environmental advocates claim the climate crisis amplifies existing inequities. Do you see that as a growing concern?
It is a growing concern, but fortunately, many funding opportunities are starting to prioritize those areas. Often those communities that are close to these kinds of risks don't have the resources necessary to build the resilience, and they might not have the training to understand what steps to take. And so that has been a concern. You see the hurricanes and the fires and things all over the country.
But now people like you are in the mix?
We are in the mix.
Okay, very good. Dr. Latice LaFair, Chief of Conservation and Stewardship at the New England Aquarium. Thank you for being here.
Thanks
for being you. And thanks so much to all of you for